You're not a full-time writer anymore.
Mm-mm.
Tell
No, sir.
everybody, we've talked about it a little bit, but maybe just share just a minute or so on what you're doing now.
Yeah, so now I'm a full-time teacher, English teacher at my alma mater where I graduated high school, and I'm also athletics coordinator, and I'm also coaching the high school varsity basketball team at that school, which we're 37 days away from our season tipping off. We started some conditioning, and we're trying to get slowly into the practices, but that's what I've been up to for the past 3 months, 2 months now. Which is why I haven't been able to cover football full time and even men's basketball. And they had their first official practice of the season last week.
I'm aware.
Hmm.
So your high school team, did you play on this team when you were in high
Yes, sir.
school?
Yep.
Okay. So any good? Gonna be any good?
What do you this season or
Yeah, this season.
this season? We
Yeah.
are we're focusing on improving because six. Now I'm gonna sound now I'm at, I don't want to say this because then I feel like I'm gonna be criticized like Daniel Hogerson. We are a very young team, top to bottom. Last year's
Oh, you
team, I
don't have
didn't.
Big 12 bodies.
We're not the name of our league is HCal. No, we're not HCal ready yet. No, just in terms of
Okay.
last year's team. I didn't coach last year's high school team. I coached the middle school team, which a lot of the players, a good number of players that I coached a season ago have now moved up to high school. But last
Okay.
year's high school team had about six seniors on the team, which obviously they've now graduated. So it's a completely different team from a season ago, and we have five freshmen on the team, and then we have three sophomores who are kind of like freshmen because they didn't play a lot last year. Period. So it's gonna be a it's gonna be a building year, if that makes sense. Not to sound all
So
cliche like a coach.
no, not at all. So you're not ranked, is what I'm hearing,
Not even
and
close.
not even ranked. You're terrible in the net. You don't have anything going for you there. Uh, so you start in early November.
Yes, sir. November 7th, the
All
first
right,
game of the season.
November 7th. So U of H plays the 6th against ULM, and then Andy on the 7th. We'll provide coverage of both. Don't you worry, we're going to have it all. All right, so while we're here, let's talk a little bit about this football team. So I want to ask you, give me one word how you would describe this football team.
Wow. One word.
Uh, it's like almost, I want to say underwhelming, but at the same time, it kind of hasn't been. I don't think this team was expected to be great. Um,
So they're just whelming.
they're just kind of whelming,
Yeah, not
but
under, not over.
the way they've been whelming has made it seem like maybe worse than maybe we expected going in.
One word. Um,
Now I know how you do 30 minutes a day.
yeah.
Maddening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think depressing would probably be my word.
I would say frustrating.
See, disappointing. And I say that, and I'm sure it's going to be a little, I don't know, even know if you could call it controversial, but the reason why it's disappointing is not even much more so that they're 0-2 in conference play. It's one, how they've honestly, especially when it comes to the second half, they haven't been competitive against TCU, against Texas Tech. And what really adds to the disappointment, that loss to Rice. You can't lose to Rice. And they almost got shut out in the first half by Rice.
One word. I'll just go with the simple one right now. Inconsistent.
That's really not for you. That's actual coffee. No.
Are you okay?
It sounded like I was doing it for what you said, but no. That's a good one. I haven't heard that one. I've heard a lot, but inconsistent's pretty good.
What we thought of UTSA at the time, it was like, okay, this UTSA is a good team. That was a good win. Defense showed up, and I was like, and it was all the pageantry with the Love You Blue jerseys that everybody loved, all the anticipation, and it was like, and the atmosphere in the crowd was as good as it had been in some years. I was like, okay, maybe this
And
team has something.
You had 42 new players too, and so you thought, okay, they're putting this together, and so give it a week, and then we'll see how it looks against Rice.
Yeah.
Whoops.
I would use. So part of me wants to say behind. I feel like we've played from behind a lot, although we didn't technically against Tech. I thought we played from behind a lot. I feel like the offense feels behind the 8 ball, or like it's like lagging behind. I feel like, we've seen
Parker Jenkins behind. Yeah.
We have seen Parker Jenkins behind. We're literally on the screen right now. So part of me wants to say behind and try and think of all the different ways that could. We're behind schedule, frankly. Like, we're behind pace with the rest of the Big 12 right now. It feels like, and all that kind of stuff. I can't think of better words. That's what I'll go with. Do you have a word in mind?
I think that's a good one. But no, that's the point, is to get where people are coming from, and I think behind is a good. I didn't think of that.
I don't know if I'm sad about the season because I kind of expected it, but it's kind of how we've done it, right? If I would have told you we had 2 wins, you'd be like, oh, we must have lost to UTSA, but it's just getting dominated in the first half by Rice, right? It's just like, maybe you don't do that one, right? Like it's how it's happened this year. For me, that's been the most disappointing thing.
I have the over at Circa for the absolute minimum amount they will let you bet, which is $5, because I thought this team was good for 5 and 7, but not much else.
How do you feel about that now?
I feel like I made a $5 donation to Las Vegas's newest downtown casino, honestly.
Yeah. I got that good pool. There's a possibility you win 5 games, right? You got to figure there's 3 wins. Maybe they're in November.
Yeah, there's a lot more bad games on the schedule than we thought there were, because the Big 12 is more disappointed this year than we thought it was going to be, for sure. But yeah, I think what's been so frustrating about this season is just like, I guess I forgot over the off season that, like, other than with the exception of like Auburn in the bowl game, like we haven't really, and maybe I guess UTSA kind of last year, haven't really beaten a team with a pulse under Dana. It's like we take care of all the crap teams, and then when we play anybody that's like remotely good, we just like fold like a chair and just like lay over and get beat. And it's like, oh, right, yeah, no, I thought that losing an NFL quarterback and like a generational wide receiver was gonna like suddenly make us better than that, when we suddenly had to only play almost entirely the teams that are actually pretty good. And then not only do we not get better, not only do we still not know how to beat teams with a pulse, but also we lost to fucking Rice and just played. Yeah, I don't know. Just 3 of the worst halves of football. The second half versus TCU, first half versus Rice, second half versus Tech. Just like 3 of the lousiest, just like nothing redeeming in them. Just like terrible, terrible halves of football you're gonna see. So I mean, again, it's not like it's just the 2 and 3. Maybe there's a version of 2 and 3 where I'm not just 100% on the like fire Dana yesterday train, but it's not, getting embarrassed versus Rice. It's not just getting completely pantsed in the second half of both of your Big 12 games.
Like I didn't ever pencil in TCU and Tech as wins when I was kind of looking at how many I thought the team could get to for the full season, but it just not really ever being competitive against TCU. And TCU's not a bad team, but they're not the same team as they were in 2022. Like that's what, like maybe 7-8 win team, and to look like you didn't even belong on the same field as them, really dispiriting. I mean, saw some good things this week in the first half against Tech, but like Dustin said, then you had maybe one of the more dispiriting halves of football. And the 4 of us have seen some really dispiriting halves of Cougar football over 20-something seasons between all of us. But man, that just not being able to do anything against Texas Tech, to have chances against Texas Tech, to have points in the game where it's like, okay, like you're down a score or 2, but you score here, you put pressure on them, maybe it's a different game, and just never even looking like you were close to it. Just never seeing this team ever in the 5th year of Dana Holgerson play a full complementary 3 phases, 4 quarters of football game against a good opponent and you're paying him for U of H, which is just far beyond what you've ever paid any coach, even inflation adjusted in our lifetimes. It feels pretty bad, man. It feels like you're not getting very much in the old ROI.
That Rice game threw a wrench in everything, because even then, if you're 3-0 in non-conference, had they still been down 28-0 and they found a way to win against Rice, that game against UTSA was ugly, but it was a win. That's what mattered. And then even if you lose to Tech and TCU, you show some semblance of competitiveness in the second half. It'd be a much different mindset. And the biggest thing that we've touched on overall across the board, across all content creators, like you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast or show, there's just not a lot of confidence in Dana Holgerson and the coaching staff as a whole to be able to, not only for this season to flip the switch, but for years to come to be able to build a contender in the Big 12. And I think that's probably what's the biggest disappointment, just in terms of where the fan base is right now, where there's not a lot of hope. And look at what Deion Sanders has done in Colorado. They're getting against Oregon. They got whooped. Against USC, they were getting destroyed again, but they showed fight. They showed
pride.
Exactly. And let's be honest, even had they not come back against USC, everyone in Colorado, anyone associated with Colorado, they would still trust that Deion Sanders was going to turn it around.
They have hope.
Yes, and that's not the case in Houston. Even look at the pro football team, which was in the dumpster here in Houston last season. They got the right coach, and they've done moves, and there's a completely different mindset around that team, which a year ago was, again, it was about rock bottom. And the biggest difference is the fans feel like they have the right guy in charge to be able to lead them out.
So Parker Jenkins has kind of been a revelation the last 2 weeks. Kind of been a breakout guy. If you remove him from the equation, who's been the most impressive to you?
Samuel Brown.
Yeah.
That's
mean,
that's all I got.
From where he was coming from last year, suspended for the bowl game and with a little incident, fight, whatever you call it, after Tulsa, I don't think anybody really expected anything from him. And the way he has just kept his head down and outworked and outperformed every receiver, including Matthew Golden, has been impressive. And I typically don't root for guys, but I'm rooting for him. Like I want that kid to succeed, because what a great story that is.
You like to see people learn from their mistakes and succeed.
Yeah, atone.
And he's doing that. Yeah, atone for it. So it's good to see it. And this is going to be a cheap shot, but whatever. I credit Samuel Brown for that more than his head coach.
Well, every player has to step up for themselves.
Yes.
You have to be your own advocate. And at some point, you do enough that people recognize it.
Right.
And Sam Brown, obviously, he got a fresh start with Donovan Smith. So there were no expectations, and he's gone out there and done it and proven to Donovan that, you throw it to me, I'm catching the ball.
Yes.
And I'm going to go do something with it after I catch it. And, with what Donovan's dealt with the drops and whatever else, I'm sure that's a great relief.
Samuel Brown, and I'd say Jack is probably second.
He's played well.
Matthew Golden has dropped the ball too much for me and probably everybody within the program without. So,
yeah.
Sam Brown has been probably the most consistent player. He's had a couple tough games, but I believe he's still averaging 100 yards a game.
Yeah, he's been over 100 yards 4 times. So
yeah, and so I think he's definitely been best player on the team, if you just went performance standpoint, it looked like Malik Fleming could have been that after the first week. He got another pick against TCU. Wouldn't say it's anybody on the defense. Nelson Caesar has had 4.5 sacks. He's had a good individual campaign so far, but I wouldn't say the defense is good enough for him to be named the sort of the MVP of the team thus far.
Okay. So what's the problem? What can be done? What's the solution? What do you think they're working on this week?
I don't know. It's there. I mentioned this on the last Afterthoughts, and Dana's mentioned it, and you've mentioned it, and everybody's mentioned it, but it's complementary football.
Yeah.
There's never been a point this year where all three phases were playing well. It's either been one at a time or two, maybe, if it was special teams and offense or special teams and defense. The offense has been terrible with getting points off turnovers, despite the defense giving you a lot. I think that they've had 10 this year. And I want to say they really only yielded 10 points, 1 touchdown maybe.
Something low. Yeah.
Yeah. When special teams is doing well, when Matthew Golden sort of gave you a jolt of energy in the TCU game with that touchdown, the offense just didn't do anything for the rest of the game. And that was sort of like, okay, here's your chance to get back in it. They had squandered two turnovers already from the defense, which is as much as they were going to be able to give you against that TCU offense. And then Golden gives you a touchdown and the offense just couldn't do it. And then
TCU went right down the field and scored right after that and did it in 5 plays. I mean, it was you never gave yourself a shot.
Yeah.
Going into the season, I thought the offense would score against TCU. I thought we were in for a thing where Houston would be losing a lot of crazy high scoring games, not unlike SMU last year, right? If you had told me they were 3-2, I'd be like, you know what, that happens. But I would have assumed we were breaking 30 more often. And I would, again, assume we scored offensive touchdowns against TCU. I think that's the frustrating thing, though, is that there's talent that doesn't seem to be living up to the expectations. And I think that's, after 5 games, everyone's frustration right now.
Is that execution? Is it scheme? Is it play calling? I know you've talked about this. Is it the lack of an offensive coordinator? Is it all of it? None of it?
I obviously coached high school football, not college football, and so I don't mean to make it easier than it is. I do think that we're going to look back on this season, when Houston's winning a national championship in however many years it takes. I think we'll look back and be like, remember that year we didn't have an offensive coordinator? That was dumb. That was not a good decision. And I'm not saying I miss Shannon Dawson a whole lot, but I think that it seems very obvious at this point. There's not a thing we hang our hat on. There's not a philosophy. It's just like, hey, this worked. Let's keep it going. Hey, I think this will work. Let's try that. Whereas an offensive coordinator, even when Dana was the offensive coordinator, he was I guess his first time around, was an air raid guy. Some people are power run scheme guys. Some people are run and shoot guys. There's no identity to this. It's just a bunch of hodgepodge stuff right now.
And there's no coordination. And so the running backs coach, the run game guy wants to do this. The guy in the booth, Burchett, wants to throw it. And the 3-headed monster is how Burchett told us in August what he called it. I don't know that that's necessarily ever going to work, because you need a point guy. You need a guy that a head coach can yell at and blame, but you also need somebody to make the decision.
You mentioned there's no one to for the head coach to point and blame and yell at.
Well, no, sorry, you're right. There's plenty of that. Is there something that can happen that makes you flip in your mind about Dana?
I mean, are we talking even semi-realistic?
Well,
I'll just say, if somehow, and I don't think this is going to happen, I want to preface this by saying, there's no evidence that this will actually happen. But I mean, beat the Longhorns here in a few weeks, and then win beat a couple of the other bad. Get to 6 wins, and one of those 6 is the Longhorns. Like, as bad as everything has been that we've talked about, like, you get to 6 and one of those is the Longhorns. Like, yeah, you're gonna keep them, and I'm not too annoyed about it. Like, I still feel amazing about the long term, but like, just realistically, you're not gonna let coach go after that. And 6 wins in your first year of the Big 12 is not bad. But to be clear, I do not believe that is realistic or has even a snowball's chance in hell of happening. Sorry, Dustin.
I was going to say, win the next 2 games, beat West Virginia to prove you can beat someone at home. That's, I mean, again, they're 4-1. They looked better than anyone thought they were going to be this year, but they still don't look like world beaters. That's still a team that, at home on a short week, you'd hope that you could get a win against, and then somehow find a way to, inspire your players one time to play the game of their lives and go out and beat the Longhorns and, win those 2 games. And yeah, I will certainly reconsider my fire him now stance on Dana, but kind of like Sam said, I'd love to be wrong. Nothing in the world. I've thought about this, because I think it's an important thing to kind of keep in mind when you turn on a coach is to just, it's good to be open to the idea that maybe they're better than you thought and maybe they're going to turn things around, because you don't want to find yourself rooting against your team. So I keep reminding myself, I'm nothing would make me happier than Dana making me look like an idiot by just suddenly making, Donovan Smith look like one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12 and winning a bunch of games the rest of the year. That'd be delightful. I would have so much fun eating crow on our podcast. But I don't know, it just doesn't seem particularly likely. So I'm not looking up any crow recipes just yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't tie it just to the Longhorns. I think if you win
Thank
6,
you.
I don't want it to just be, oh, we beat the Longhorns like we're the Aggies and that's the most important thing to us is beating the Longhorns, and then we'll be happy with whatever happens in our season. I would rather win 6 games, and if he wins 6, he's gonna stay. At media days, no matter who he beats, no matter how he gets to 6, he's gonna stay if he gets to 6. Now, what would make me turn and want to see him stay? I think 6 again. I think that's my goal as well. Go to a bowl. At media days, everyone asked, "What does a successful season for this coach look like?" And everyone was just like, "A bowl game would be incredibly successful for us. A bowl game would be incredibly successful for us. We're shooting for a bowl game." And I think if you get 6, I don't really care how he gets there in this first year. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing that makes sense of that is really in 4 years he's had 1 successful season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
2 years
against
ago,
the worst schedule in school history.
Yeah. But he won 12 games. Just don't look at how good any of the teams that we beat were.
A couple of years ago when they went on that 11-game winning streak, ran into Cincinnati in the American Athletic Conference Championship. They were competitive for that first half, and then the second half switch flipped and they couldn't compete.
It was the same thing, Tech, the first game of that season. You led 21-7 at the half, and then were shut out in the second half, and they beat you 38-21. And that's a huge problem, that adjustment, the way that other teams respond after halftime. And U of H did it against Rice, but, I mean, that's kind of an asterisk kind of thing because they were playing a little bit of prevent. They were thinking U of H couldn't do it. So
the biggest thing, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
the biggest
go
thing
ahead.
about that Rice game was even the post-game comments about how they overlooked Rice, especially considering what the Owls almost did a season ago. It was hard to imagine them not treating Rice with the proper respect because they almost beat them a season ago.
Yeah.
They came real close. I thought that McCaffrey had come down with the ball on the last play a season ago. He didn't, but they were right there. They had an extra play or two. They would have scored and they would have gone for 2. And I
gone for 2, 100%.
I wouldn't have bet against them converting. So they came real close last year. They did it this year, and again, just overall builds up to the sense of frustration that the fans have around the program.
And so this West Virginia team is better than everyone expected. They're 4-1. The defense is pretty good. Do you think this is something people should feel good about, or do you think this is kind of the same thing until U of H proves it, that people are going to be just sort of, show me?
I think we were able to see that the offense at its peak is able to really score if they stay with it and they do all those sort of intermediate passes, those outside runs with Parker Jenkins and things like that. But I think until they see it, whether it's against West Virginia or whoever, you're just going to have to assume that this team is not going to be able to play a full game, fully together where everybody's playing well. Every phase is playing all right, at least.
Yeah, putting it all together
and putting it all together.
To do. Yeah. Complementary football. I went back. I looked at every game. I found 3 games where you've played complementary football. The last one was East Carolina, probably the only above 500 team you've beaten that you played complementary football. You won 46-3 or whatever. And I mean, you thought, okay, this team has turned a corner. And then what do? You come home and you lose to Tulsa. Yeah, that's the groan I was looking for.
There are a lot of really dispiriting things about last year. I think one that gets overlooked is that your last ever AAC football game was losing to a Tulsa team that absolutely everyone who follows this kind of thing like we do knew they were literally less than 24 hours from canning Philip Montgomery.
Oh, he was fired before the game.
Yeah, they went out there and beat you, and it wasn't even they beat you pretty comprehensively with a redshirt freshman legacy redshirt freshman legacy, who had barely played, and he just we made him look like fucking Vince Young.
They made him take the Flix bus back to Tulsa. That's how fired he was.
Yeah, I mean, that being the other really just inexcusable loss on Ordena. Kind of like I said, it's the best thing you could say about him, the nicest thing you could say about him until the end of last year was, okay, at least he doesn't lose to the shitty teams. And then within the last 6 regular season games, he's lost twice to shitty teams. And it's just and he still hasn't beat anybody good. So it's just it's not getting better, it's getting worse.
Who are we getting production at? I think Parker Jenkins has had a pretty strong year for a freshman. I think Donovan Smith has been actually kind of what I thought he would be, right? Not higher, not lower. Kind of what I thought would happen. And I think there's frankly not he could play better. Obviously, they could all play better, but I think that they could be winning more games with him playing as is. What are you talking about on GoCoogs as working or as being productive? What's gone well?
Well, until this week, we've talked about punting, but we're off that now. So
that's of all the weeks to ask that question, that's really funny. Yeah. Actually, has to be the worst special teams game Dana's ever coached, though, right? Like for all his faults, they haven't had those issues
for sure. Well, he's had 2 really good special teams coaches, Gideon, and then now Mark Scott, and I think Scott is a genius. He's different. He's way different. But I think he's a genius. But they did not pick up on the punt block. They didn't pick up what Tech was showing them. On the kickoff return, I'm going to tell you, if the kick was perfect. You can't kick it in a better spot. 3 yards deep in the corner. That's exactly what you want to do.
Most people don't take it out.
No, they don't. And especially 3 yards deep, and especially pinned back like that. And he took it down the sideline. Nobody does that. Everybody goes field side. And he goes right down the side. And I mean, you do that 1,000 times, and he's tackled inside the 20, 990 of them. Yeah.
Well, and his coaches, he's tackled at the 19, and his coach is breaking a foot off on him, saying you should have just kneeled it. We get a few more yards. Like that's 100% how it plays out most of the time. It just
And I mean, you can talk about holds and everything else, but the kid made a great play, and it looked stupid when he caught it, and then 103 yards later, it looked pretty smart.
Yeah, the punt's interesting because I said on Twitter like that they missed a block, and a bunch of people responded with like, "Oh, what are you talking about? Like that's a dumb punt formation." I was like, "It's really," and I pulled up clips to try and check a couple
No,
different.
it's a great formation.
The punt formation is built to not give up touchdowns in the return, and they had 6 guys to block, 6 guys rushing. They just missed 2 of them. They missed 2 different guys.
They actually the 2 guards next to, so the long snapper can't block, right?
Not immediately. Yeah, not immediately.
Yeah, so he can't block on the line. The 2 guys that are on the line as guards, both linebackers, and they both immediately release downfield. They didn't even try. And so you've got 6 tech guys on your 3 personal protectors. The protectors all slid to the right, and the guy from Tech's right, I mean, he just had to walk in there. There really wasn't
well, and
that much to do.
It was baffling because I've watched the game a handful of times now to try and like talk about it, and it's painful. But the 2 linebackers, but the guards, as you're saying, if they're on offensive line, it's like they think that the Tech guys are going to run with them. Like they don't even make real attempts at it. It's not like they missed the block.
No one's doing this, but if you go back and watch the punts from this year, that's kind of what happens. Nobody's really gone after the punter. Like TCU, there was one guy who got close, but it wasn't like everybody goes back for return. And
well, because if you don't get the block, what you've done is you've given 2 linebackers free release to go get the guy with the ball, right?
Right, and you got 4 gunners too. So,
right.
I mean,
schematically, I get why. Yeah, it just they did, and it worked.
And then after that punt, there were 4 guys on the line. They timed the next first one.
The next gunner down came in. Yeah.
Well, they put in Hassan Hippolyte on the right side, and then the next 3 punts, I think, they put McCutcheon in on the left side. It was the punt where Hassan Hippolyte was on the right side that McCutcheon was out at gunner, and he got the penalty for kick catch interference. So
yeah, which
there was a lot of problems on absolutely. That's a weird rule. You see a guy bobble it, you kill him.
Instinct. I'm not mad at the true freshman on that. I can't get that.
Well, I can't get mad at plays of aggression, like aggression within the game. If you pop off and smack somebody, that's different. But if you're playing the game, it happens. But you took a guy from the 5-yard line to the 20.
Change that drive. Yeah.
I'm Stuart Gus, official personal injury attorney of U of H Athletics. As you know, a great quarterback wins championships. If you've been injured in an auto accident, big or small, you can trust Gus to quarterback your case.
Call 866-TRUST-GUS today. Principal office, Houston, Texas.